Alright everyone, it's time to talk about Michael Flynn, because nobody wants to talk about anything else at the moment. And this is the only video I'm going to do for the morning. I've got something to do early afternoon, then I'll be back and I'll make a couple other videos. Thinking an occult video, literary update, general, and so forth. It'll be some good stuff. Michael Flynn is seeking immunity in exchange for testifying before the FBI regarding all this Russia stuff. And immediately what happens? The corporate media takes a relatively brief explanation of what's happening and extrapolates several layers above that and decides, oh, well, this has something to do with Trump colluding with the Russians in relation to the U.S. election, the presidential election. Only that was never actually said now, was it? We know that Flynn had somewhat questionable foreign dealings, which is why he was cut loose by the Trump administration. Is it not conceivable that Flynn is talking about business partners here, again, in exchange for immunity, other individuals, maybe even in other countries, who were also in collusion with Flynn? How do we know this has anything to do with Donald Trump? It could just have to do with Flynn and some of his associates, maybe people lower than himself. Maybe he's talking about Tillerson. Maybe he's talking about Mike Pence. Maybe he's talking about the Clintons and he has something to say about them. How do we know that this has anything to do with Donald Trump supposedly colluding with the Russians? Everyone's grabbing that out of their ass as the explanation. They've made the logical leap that, oh, Flynn connected to Trump, Trump Russia, therefore Flynn also Russia. They've made that very strange triangulation in their minds that that's the only thing that this could have anything to do with. But that's not necessarily the case, and as we noticed in the fairly recent past, with the Clinton server investigation, I seem to recall a couple of her staffers and so forth took immunity deals and testified, and she never went to prison, and the FBI never filed charges, and nothing was ever accomplished. So even if Trump did Russia, this doesn't mean anything. People saying, oh, he's gone for sure, he's going to be impeached now. I'll bet you anything he won't be. I'll bet you anything that this doesn't even involve Donald Trump beyond the tangential. Oh yeah, some other staffer emailed the Russians. They gave me like 10 grand, blah, blah, says Flynn to the FBI. Oh yeah, this happened, that. And by the way, even if he testifies, how do we know it's going to be made public? How do we know this has anything to do with the Trump investigation? The one that's kind of sort of in existence, but we're not exactly sure, and nobody will fucking tell us what's going on. It's about as transparent as a granite boulder. And when things are as transparent as a granite boulder, you're probably never going to hear what's actually going on involving the intelligence community, so-called, the unintelligence community, or the Trump campaign, or the Clintons, or whoever this revolves around. We're probably never going to get to hear what Flynn says. So why is it that I see so many leftist media outlets, so-called media, the mollusk media, why is it that I see them celebrating as though this is like the eve of a Trump impeachment? You've made such a massive logical leap that you're setting yourselves up for disappointment. They're all saying, oh, Trump will be impeached now, or maybe, Mike Pence or something. How do you know it goes to the top? How do you know it does? How do you know Flynn's not at the top of this investigation? He's saving his ass because he did dealings with some other, a criminal syndicate, or the Russian mafia, or something like that, and he did dealings with them, and he's willing to give them all the info they want on these groups because it'd be, helpful in their investigations and sell it to foreign intelligence firms, whatever, but having nothing to do with Trump. What if it has to do with the Russia investigation, but it has nothing to do with Trump? Here's what I think. I don't think there's any connection between Trump and Russia. When people say, oh, well, Russians invested in this Trump tower, they invested in this casino, they stopped by and they had a meeting. He was a businessman. You never hear the media talk about how Trump is controlled by the Scottish because he had a golf course there and met with the Scottish government. You never hear about him being controlled by the French because, oh, well, he bought a little bit too many winemaking recipes from this one group, and maybe that's evidence that he's controlled by, New Wave Napoleonic, French imperialists. You never hear about that. You never hear about Trump being so-called controlled by any of the other groups he ever did business with, only with Russia. But the only reason that they fixate on that is because the same corporate old guard media apparatus took up the Russia story, which was never proven. It was largely fed to them hook, line, and sinker by the Clinton campaign as a deflection from the Clinton campaign on the DNC emails. They immediately jumped to the conclusion that Russia had hacked them with zero evidence. There's now reason to believe that a lot of that stuff was fabricated in the first place, and it might not have had anything to do with anyone in any foreign state. It probably was homegrown right in the United States. So if that part breaks down, there's no longer any credible reason to believe there's any connection between Trump and Russia. If Flynn was doing dirty business with the Russians, and I believe there was another one or more other states, wasn't it Turkey, that he or somebody else was doing some business with? Oh, that's Turkey. Well, he's a Turkish asset. Oh no. You know, the media said very, very little about that very real fact that either he or one of these other staffers who got cut loose fairly early on was taking money and being sort of an advisor to the Turkish government. The media talked about that for like a day, maybe 2 days in some cases. Then they let it go, and you've never heard about it again. Only about Russia. It's all Russia. Russia's got an economy smaller than that of Italy. How sophisticated can their propaganda and spying apparatus really be? This is not the Soviet Union. We're dealing with Russia. It is a economic rust bucket already in recession with a declining currency that's desperately scrambling to go beyond being largely an oil-based and energy-based economy because, of course, there's an oil recession right now, essentially. That's what Russia is. I don't think that Russia truly has the means to make the investments that they're making while also attempting to influence our elections. It's gone beyond the U.S. Supposedly, not only have they successfully infiltrated our government, influenced our election, and killed off poor little Hillary Clinton and her campaign because she was such a shining bastion of glory, you know, with Uranium One and all this other crap. They're also attempting to influence the Brexit. Oh, they're in favor of that. Theresa May must be a Russian espionage agent. Oh, Le Pen is an espionage agent for the Russians. They back Front National, and they're playing with the polls. They're playing with voters. They're conducting propaganda online. Of course there are Russian shills online. Yeah, back when you said this half a decade ago, these same leftist outlets called you a tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorist because back then they still thought Russia was to the left of us. And Russia opposed like Bush-era policy, so they were the good guys. They loved Vladimir Putin back then. Oh, what a wonderful man that Vladimir is. Well, we could learn from them. Just like they said Venezuela was the mark of socialism and everyone should emulate them back when their economy was doing well. They used to have no problem. I used to see other people who are liberal, and I was self-proclaimed a liberal back then. I can remember when they started posting basically nothing but RT articles. Oh, Bush did this, Bush did that, you know, Obama's doing this warmongering, the Republicans did this, oh, terrible, horrible stuff, lots of censorship, oh, free speech zones, warmongering, proxy wars, war for oil, war for blood, and so forth. I can remember that period of time. And now they don't do that. Now they say, oh, well, if you post their articles, it's fake news. You know, the same news firms they referred to themselves, you know, half a decade ago. It's fake news. It's propaganda. Russia did it all. Trump is a Russian asset. Every other person in the GOP apparently is a Russian agent. It's Reds under the bed crap. This is propaganda that we're seeing. It is literally fake news. There's no other label to use for it. It's not even news. Hell, it's not even really fake news because it'd have to be news to be fake news. But it's not even reporting on real events. This is a story that was concocted by the DNC when they got hammered by leaked emails. They said, oh, it was the Russians. And then the media apparatus ran with it and ran it into the ground. And now every time anyone comes forth with any information of any wrongdoing by any party within the U.S. government, the immediate gut reaction of everyone on the left and all of the corporations that they listen to for their so-called news, Russia. Trump is Russia. Tillerson's Russia. Everybody's Russia. The fact that Trump was a private businessman doing business with half a dozen other states at a time for decades and decades totally escaped their notice. Trump builds a building in India. Does that mean Modi controls him? He builds a golf course in Scotland. Does that mean the Scottish government or the UK controls him? He's a British agent. He builds something, let's say he builds something in Germany. Merkel controls him now? No, it's just the Russians. Russia. All because the DNC couldn't deal with the fact that all of its dirt got exposed by WikiLeaks. They even declared them to be Russian agents. How very funny, they used to be shining, glorious people, and Julian Assange did nothing wrong back when he was putting out stuff in the Iraq War era. Back when W was president, he was a glorious, wonderful man then. If Snowden had come forth under the Bush administration, he would have been a hero to them too. But because he came forth under Obama, oh, he's a Russian and Chinese agent too. They said the same thing about Snowden. They smeared him the same way. Oh, he must be he went to China, and now he's in Russia. He must be giving them our state secrets. He didn't need to. They wouldn't have paid him a red cent for your state secrets because it was already leaked under the CIA crap. They already have your state secrets. That was the result of the intelligence apparatus, so-called. Why is everyone jumping to the conclusion that Flynn's testimony, as far as I know, his immunity offer or request hasn't been accepted, so it may not even come about. If he testifies, it may not have anything to do with Trump. Even if it does it necessarily involve the Russians? Maybe it involves some other expenditure. Maybe he's actually an asset of the Greenlanders. They got together and offered him $100,000 to I don't know, fight a war against Iceland on their behalf, so they could invade and conquer Iceland, so they could expand their empire or something. It's just as likely as the Marussia crap. Everyone's jumping to a bunch of retarded conclusions based on no evidence. Nobody's weighing in on this. Flynn says, oh yeah, I'm going to seek immunity. Oh, it must be Trump. It must be Russia. It has something to do with Putin. How do you know? You know, these groups don't even conduct journalism anymore. They don't even bother to investigate. They just weigh in with their opinion. Any random person can do that. If you're not going to do any form of investigation or critical thinking, you're no better than some random person who puts up a webcam and sits there talking about UFOs and Nibiru. It's the same crap that you see on CNN and Fox every day now. It's not even a media. It's not even a press. What press? They're not disseminating information. They just weigh 99% of it is some idiot pundit sits there and spews the stuff that they're told to say by a CEO who is less attractive. The pundit simply has to be attractive and capable of stringing more sentences together than Barack Obama on a less coherent day. That's all they have to do. Russia. It's a bunch of bullcrap. I bet you wait and see. I bet nothing comes of it. No, I don't think Trump gets impeached. That's about all. Peace out.